Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark. I'm going to be the person doing your webinar today. I'm from Sunrise Systems. We are the developers of the online financial disclosure system. I do have today on the call with us Dana Jones from Local Government Services, DCA, and just want to kind of go over what our agenda is going to be today. I'll just pull one up, but I did put a document in the presentation section or the handout section if you want to download it. Couple things. Everybody is on mute for this webinar. We're going to ask that if you have any questions, there is a question section in the little, pull out on, the right side of your screen. That's where it is on my screen. You could type your questions in there. What we'll try to do is periodically we will stop, look at those questions. We'll answer the questions, myself or Dana. And then towards the end of the webinar today, Dana does have something she wants to share also. And then at the end, we will still open it up for questions and answers, and then try to stay on as long as possible. I know I originally scheduled this webinar for an hour and a half. From when we did it in the past, it was mostly questions took up the majority of the webinar. However, my presentation should only be 30 to 45 minutes at the most. And then, like I said, we will have a presentation from Dana and then, open questions and answers at the end. So basically our agenda for today will be how to log into the FDS system, how to maintain your LGO roster, how an LGO sets up an account, how LGO files an FDS statement, and how LGO can amend that, and then how did somebody search? How do they go out to the public website in order to do their search? And then just a couple of phrases I will use, throughout today's webinar is when I refer to LGS, that refers to Local Government Services, AKA the DCA. If I refer to LGE, those are the local government entities. So that's you folks that are on the call today, mainly municipalities, colleges, GIFs, counties, so on and so forth. And then the LGO or your local government officials. This is who's actually going to be filing the FDSs. And then obviously FDS stands for Financial Disclosure Statement. Okay, so those are kind of the things that, that we use throughout this webinar. The first thing I'm going to just ask real quick, just to make sure that everybody can hear me correctly. So somebody can just maybe type, one or two people, and I know I get a lot in the question section, that you can hear me okay. We'll get started and we'll move forward. Okay, good. I got it. Everybody says they can hear me, so very good. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody can also see my screen as well too. Let me double check here, and I should be sharing my screen now. So we should be good on that. If somebody can just confirm that they can see my screen, that'll be great. Oops, sorry, I think I did that. Yep, okay, good. Okay, so I'm here at the login screen for the financial disclosure system. So this will be the login screen, whether you're a local government entity or you're an LGO, you're all gonna come to the same screen. Pretty much, you'll have your email address to log into the system. You'll have your password. However, we know that since people do this only once a year, if somebody forgets their password, they can always go down and click on the forgot password, especially the LGOs. If they do that, basically what it's going to do, it's going to ask them to put in their email address that they utilize when they registered for the system. And if that matches, the password will be emailed to them. If LGO contacts you and says, well, what's my password that I used the last time, or to get into the system, you're not going to be able to find out what the password is. Passwords are encrypted in the system. However, and when we get into the screen a little bit later, you as a an LGE, whether you're a municipal clerk or whoever manages the roster, can actually go in and update or assign them a new password. So we'll go through that a little bit later on. The other things on the login screen here is the new registration link that's down here right below the login button, and that's for your for local government officers to go in and actually register an account. We also have a link here to take you out to the search site, so you can go search for those FDSs that have been filed. So this is a link there. And then down below are the system requirements. Now, I'm working in our test system today. I'm not going to be in our live system. So some of the information you see in here, if I pull up your particular town or county or whatever, don't get alarmed that the information is not correct, because again, this is our test data and our test system. But you'll see under system requirements what's required in order to utilize the system. Now, this has to actually be updated a little bit. Even though we still support Windows 7, most people have moved over to Windows 10. Even some might have moved over to Windows 11. Apple Macs are supported. So myself today, I'm actually working on my Mac. I mean, for internet browsers, any compatible browser, Internet Explorer version 9 or above, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, all work. We do tell people to enable pop-ups and allow cookies within their browser, since we do have pop-ups that come up as well too. And then for viewing certain documents like the FDS, you'll need some type of PDF viewer. It could be Adobe Acrobat, or it could just be an equivalent PDF viewer within your web browser. And then the best resolution to actually look at this is 1024 by 768 or higher. So these are the simple requirements that we ask people to utilize, especially when they're filing the FDS. Even though you could go in on a tablet or a phone, we do not recommend it. Sometimes things get cut off that people can't see. It just works a lot better if people filing, LGOs filing their FDSs, do it on a computer. So, you know, that's kind of the system requirements. So let's talk about, so we talked about how to log into the FDS system. So let's talk about how to maintain a roster. So I am going to log in as one of my LGE accounts. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so I just logged in as a local government entity. I'm logged in here, municipality, Edison Township, County of Middlesex. That happens to be the town that I reside in, so it makes it a little bit easier. But when you first log into the system here, you're going to see a couple things. Up at the top, it's going to say submission year 2022. So we're in the current year. Your LGO rosters, there's 26 entries on your roster. And then for this year, FDS submissions are 0. Since I just initiated this new year in the test system, we haven't done any FDS submissions yet. So ultimately, what you want to get to is that this 26 or this FDS submissions matches the LGS roster here. So it should be 2626. If you see that, then you know that everybody has filed their FDS form for your particular organization. Down below, we have a couple icons. One is to go in and manage your LGO roster. The second one is reports. And then the third one is where you can actually go in and edit. I talked a little bit earlier about those local government users, where you can actually go in and update their information. And then also from the system here where you're logged in, you can actually go and search right from here the financial disclosures as well too. Excuse me. So let's jump into the roster. I'm going to click on Manage LGO Roster. And this is going to come up with a screen, and it's going to basically list, you know, all your people that you have on your roster. Okay. Now, typically what we do, if I move you over to the right-hand side here, if you see where my cursor is, we have two drop-down selection. One is FDS file status. Right now, we're just showing all. But you also have the ability to filter out based on who's filed and who's not filed for the current year. So that's one filter you can do. The second one is also what we call LGO active status. Okay, right now it's displaying all, but we can list just active people on your roster, or you can get a list of the inactive. So basically the difference is, and we'll show you how to make a person inactive. If you have somebody that's on your roster that no longer, when I say is associated with the town in any capacity that they have to file an FDS, we would go in and mark that individual as inactive. Anybody that's marked as active means that basically that individual has to file an FDS for your particular organization. For organizations that manage a lot of people on their roster, you know, we display on the first screen here 25 entries. You could click on the number 2 at the bottom to go to the next list, right? So I think here in Edison I have set up right now is 39 people. On the left-hand side where it says page size, this would either display 25 per page, or you can select 50 per page if you have a larger organization. For the very, very large organizations, maybe counties or large municipalities, to quickly find something, we do provide a search feature up at the top where you can just type in a person's last name and or first name and hit search and get to that individual immediately. Typically, when you first go into the search screen, we display in last name order alphabetically. So if you look down the left-hand side, you'll see that the last name is in alphabetical order. On any of our search grids here, any of the column headings, if you click on that column heading, it will sort that column in ascending order on the first click, and we'll do descending order on the second click. So for example, like if I click on title, okay, if I do that, what it does is it puts all the individuals in order based on title. So first click, put it in ascending order, right? So we see administrator, CFO, council person, engineer, members. These are probably members of different various boards. But if I want to go back to last name order, just click on the last name column heading and it will put that column in, again, ascending order for the first click. If I second click it, it then puts it in descending order. Okay, so it's up to you. But just a quick way to go through and actually sort your columns if you need to. Okay. So going over, we show on this search grid, we show last name, first name, we show which board or agency that's assigned to that particular entry, what the title is, login name, PIN number, has an FDS PIN file, and then over here is the active column. So anybody that is not checked means they're inactive. Anybody that's checked is an active, current active role within that organization. And then the edit button will allow us to go in and quickly just, manage that particular person, okay? So basically that's it. If you see, just one thing I want to point out here real quick, anybody, if I click on the login name and sort this, what it's going to do is display blanks first, right? Because it puts in an ascending order the first rank. Anybody that has a missing login name means that that individual has not registered yet as an LGO. Okay, so they have not set up an account with their corresponding PIN number. Now, when I say hasn't set up an account, they might have an account in the system already for another, let's say, municipality or county or some other organization that they're a member of as well. But if it's blank here, it means for your organization, they still have not either set up an account or attached your organization to their main account. Okay, so these are definitely people that FDS file will always be no because they're not attached yet. So just want to point that out to you. That's a quick way to know individuals that haven't even, linked their, their account with your municipality or organization to their main account or set up an account like that. So let's talk about right now. So I'm going to do my LGO active status. I'm going to just pick up the active people first, right? So these are all the active individuals that I have on my particular roster. And I'm going to resort this based on last name, okay? So it's kind of in order. So what you'll see is on the first entry here, on the first two lines, you'll see the same person listed twice, John Bose, okay? And the reason why he's listed twice is because he has two different entries within your organization. So the first one, it lists them at title as a council member or council person, and the second one, he or she is a member of the Shade Tree Commission. When I click on edit for John, okay, when I go into the edit screen, you'll see I'm going to kind of start at the bottom here. Down at the bottom where it says list of positions held, it will show both the council person and the member, right? You don't have to go, if they're listed twice on the search screen, you don't have to go into each individual entry off the search screen. So whether I clicked on edit on the first line for John Bose or the second line, it's still going to take me to the same screen right here, okay? And then you'll see the two different positions that they have already currently set up for you. Now you could do a couple things here, okay? You can add a new position, or you can edit a current position, or you can delete a position, right? So let's say, for example, we'll take the delete position first, and then we'll work back to adding a position. So let's say I'm looking at John. John is still a council person. However, he or she is no longer part of the Shade Tree Commission. I can come in here and I can just click delete. Okay, it's going to give me a confirmation. Are you sure you want to delete this position? I'm going to say okay. And then you'll notice now that that position is now removed from the positions held section. Okay. If I can also go in and I can edit some of this information if it was entered either incorrectly. So like if I click on edit, up now in the section above, it actually says add edit LGO position. It brought up them as council person, shows what the board or agency is. And then the effective date that I had in here was from January 1st, 2022 through 12/31/2022. Let's say I made a mistake. It should have been 2022, 12/31/2022. What I could do is I can come in here now and say, this position was going to be through, let's say 2024. Okay. So what I'll just do is I'll make that change there and I'll hit save. I will let you know that the effective from and effective to dates are more for reference only for you. It doesn't do anything within the system per se, but it's just more for you to know, if you see something there like, let's say this position was only effective through 12/31/2021. And let's say this person was reelected, then you can go in and you can just update the effective to date. However, if that person, let's say, wasn't reelected, you can always delete that position if they no longer hold that position. Then being in the second section here, because it's the add edit LGO positions, I can add a new position to this person. So let's say this person, John, he has another position. So in the drop down under category, we list 4 categories. One is an elected official. The second one is an independent authority. The third is managerial executive member / confidential employee. And then others, I know it says see instructions, and I'm going to let maybe Dana reference that in a little while, exactly who might fall into other. But let's say I'm going to say an executive member. And let's say John is part of the zoning board, and maybe John's position is just a member of the zoning board. Okay. I don't have any effective dates. Maybe it's an open term, okay, that there is no physical dates assigned until either person decides to resign. So I'm going to leave the dates blank for right now. I'm going to click on save, and then down at the bottom under zoning board, okay, you'll see that position listed there. Okay, if I ever do want to go back and add in dates, I can always go back in. We could always put an effective date in. Let's say it was 1/1/2022. Okay, I can put in what the effective date was, but I'm going to leave the effective to date blank because we might not know how long they're going to serve on that particular board as a member. Okay, so again, this is kind of where you add your positions. There is technically no limit to how many positions you can add. But again, these are the positions for your particular organization that you're going to add. And then jumping all the way to the top, in the very top section, again, first name, last name you'll see here. Now, one of the things that we like to point out is that when you set up somebody brand new, okay, let me actually jump out of here real quick. Let me go back. Well, actually, hold on. When you set up somebody brand new, you want to use their legal, when I say their legal first name. A lot of times, you might have somebody, Robert, he goes by Bob. You might have somebody, William, goes by Will, so on and so forth. But you want to use their legal name. When they set up their account, they can use whatever they want. But for your purpose, you want to kind of utilize their legal name as you set this up. I mentioned earlier where you can actually go in and update a password. So if you see right here where it says register login ID, if you see an email address there and a button, edit profile, you can actually click on that edit profile button, and what that'll do is that'll take you into that user's profile where you can actually update their name, right? So now I'm in actually John's profile that he had set up, with his name, his address, and all that. And then down below here is where you can actually change the password or update the password for that LGO, that individual. As you see in the password and the confirm password fields, you'll see dots there. Again, like I mentioned, passwords are encrypted in the system, so we never display a password. But if you wanted to change a user's password, what you would need to do is delete both of these fields, right? enter a new password in, following the guidelines here, meaning that the password has to be between 8 and 16 characters in length, must contain at least one letter, one number, and one special character. And then once you enter that information in, you would click on save. You would get a green message at the top that says that the password saved successfully. So let me just do this real quick so I show you. So I'm going to type it correct, and I'm going to click on save. And then again, you get the message at the top that the user profile was updated successfully. If there was an error updating that profile, it would be displayed in red and would tell you the reason why. Most likely it's going to say the password doesn't match, okay? But you always want to get that green message up at the top of the screen, okay? And then the other thing we display here for you too is if they fall under, the law that, they're either a law enforcement officer or a retired law enforcement officer or a member of the household, you'll see what they check there. You cannot make any changes to that. They physically have to do that, but you would actually see if it was selected initially if that was checked. So again, that you'll find in this middle section right here. I'm going to click on back here for a second. I'm going to go back out to the search screen. Okay. So if somebody in your organization is brand new, okay, and this is the first time that you're going to add them to the roster, when you come to this search screen initially, at the bottom, there'll be a button that says LGO. So what you'll do is you'll click on that. You'll put in, the person's first name, right? So let me just put in John. Let's see. I'll just pick up a name here, okay? If you have a middle name or a middle initial, you can put that in as well too. And then you have a comment section here. Comments, you can put in any comments you want. Again, it's reference only. It doesn't go to anybody or do anything, but it's just your own internal comments. Now, at this point, when I click on save, okay, what's going to happen is up in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to get a PIN number. This is very important because that LGO is going to need that PIN number when they go to register, right? That's what links their account to your organization. So I'm going to note that down just so I have it here when we get to that section. So that's the PIN number that's going to actually link them to the organization. Now, after I did the initial save at the top, now I'm going to go down and I'm going to add them, to the roster. So let's say this person is part of the planning board and the position is they're a member as well too. And effective date was maybe 1/1/2022 because it's a new year. I click on save, and then down below we'll see under list of positions held, we'll see that that person is listed on your roster now. Okay. You could click on the print button. Some people will click on the print button. They'll print out this form with the PIN number and give it to that person. So when they go back to a computer and they register their account, they have their information and their PIN number. A good idea of why you would want to print this out or send this to them, what we talked about before with the first name, this first name and last name and PIN number must match exactly when they go to register. If it doesn't match exactly, it's not going to allow them to register. So might be a good idea to print this out or save it as a PDF and then send it to them if you're sending it to them via email. And then here, so once I'm done and I go back, okay, if I did a search, you'll see right here, this is the new person I just added. I have two people, John Gallant. One is Brett and one is John, two different people. But you'll notice that their PIN numbers are different, okay, because again, two different people on the roster. Okay, so that's how they basically, you go in and you manage your roster. Just kind of going through this, you're going to want to go through all your entries. You're going to want to take a look at, all your members. You want to make sure what positions they held. Do they still currently have that position? Do you need to update it, delete it, however? But you can just go in here. You can click on the edit and then just update those individuals as needed. So that's kind of updating your particular rosters as you go forward. So I'm going to pause for a second and just see if there's any questions that have come up. Let me see here. Okay, so I knew this question was going to come up, and me and Dave actually just talked about it before we jumped on the call. I'm going to have Dana respond to this a little bit later in the thing regarding Daniel's law. Okay, she will make a statement about that, so I'm not going to get into it right now. But basically, we'll just leave it at that for right now. But stay to the end, and you'll get some answers on that. Okay, let me go out to the home screen here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so that's where you wanted to manage your roster. Now we do have a report in the system for you as well too. Okay, you can click on this to run your printed out version of the roster. Again, the status is all those individuals that are active, inactive, or all. Okay, so if I picked active and then I want to look at a specific year, okay, that they were active, I'm going to do 2022. Okay, and then I'm going to click on View Report. The system is going to put this as a screen view first on here. However, if you want to print this out, what you would do is this little disk icon here, there's a drop down, and we give you options in exporting this particular report. You can export it as a, let's say, I'm not even going to do XML. You could do it as a CSV file similar to an Excel spreadsheet. You can export it as a PDF. We do have an Excel too, so you could do either one, CSV or Excel. You could put it into Word. Most people utilize the PDF version, right, or option. So you click on PDF, and what will happen is now, if you see my screen, here's a PDF copy of the report. So I know some individuals like to print out this report first and start kind of looking at it because it does list each individual and what positions are listed in the system. They kind of mark up this report first, and then they go back and they make all changes within the system after they mark up the report. So again, everybody does it a little bit differently, what's more effective for them. But mainly what I've heard in the past is most people will print out this report, mark it up, and then go in, make their changes, deletions, additions, so on and so forth. So again, that report is available to you within the system. I'm going to click on the Reports Home button here, and then Home, going to take me back out to the home screen. Okay. The Edit Local Government Entity Profile Manage Users is similar to, well, not similar, but this is your organization yourself. It's just the main contact person within your organization is listed on this screen. So like I said, I'm in here as Edison Township. Okay. This is the main contact person that I have set up here with the URL and all that. Anything with a red asterisk is a mandatory field. So at a minimum, that information has to be set up. Now, we also have a button here which says Manage Users. If we click on that button, these are all the users that are set up within your organization to manage the roster, to log in and manage the roster. So if you, as let's say, the municipal clerk, delegates this responsibility, let's say, to the deputy clerk, you could set up the deputy clerk with a user account so that person can actually log in with their own username and password in order to manage that roster, and you don't have to share your username and password with them. You can have multiple people that manage the roster. Okay, so each individual that needs to be set up, you would click on Add LG Login. Okay, and then you would just fill out this information here. Okay, first name, last name, login again will be the email address to log into the system, phone number, and password. Now, I will point out one thing with the login name, because most municipal clerks and deputy clerks, or anybody that's managing the roster, let's say, most likely will have to also submit an FDS as well too. Okay, what we tell people to do is, for managing the roster, what you would utilize is your official, let's say, organization email. So if I'm part of a municipality, I would use my, let's say, mark@edison.org email address. However, if I have to submit an FDS as well too, okay, if I'm required, when I set up my LGO account, I'm not going to use, mark@edisontownship.org email address. I'm going to use my personal email address. They have to be different, okay? If you try to utilize the same username and password, it will not allow you to do that, okay? So you have to use two. So what we tell people to do is use your official, organization email address to manage the roster, or have your account to manage the roster. And then again, if you're required to file an FDS, use your personal email address to set up your LGO account. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well too. If I need to inactivate somebody, this Bobby Jones here, it says inactive. There's no check, or yeah, there's no checkbox there. I disabled that person. Okay, so that person will not be able to log in any longer. We do not allow you to delete an individual because for audit tracking purposes, that person's information is attached to records that they've updated within the system. So basically what you would do is you would come in here, let's say normally if this person was active when I came in here, and you say, oh, Bobby Jones is no longer with my organization. I just click on the disable checkbox here. I hit save, hit OK. And now that user is what we call disabled or inactive. And that user will not be able to log into their account in order to manage the roster. So again, that's how you would go in and you would update individuals within your organization. Add, again, new individuals that manage the roster, and also inactivate users that manage the roster. So let me see if there's any more questions here. Give me a second. I'm going to pause and let's see. I got to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. Okay, so it says, what if someone resigned during 2022? Do they need to fill out an FDS form? So I'll have Dana kind of chime in a little bit on that a little bit later. But from my understanding is when they're filling out an FDS form, let's say we were doing it today, it's actually for information for 2021 that they're completing for. So if they were a member for 2021 in some capacity, then they need to fill out a form. However, if
wait, Mark, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. That's actually incorrect. So the only people who fill out the FDS for 2022 are those in office or in those positions today. It doesn't matter what their position was in 2021. And we will address this later, but I'll go over how you should determine who has to be on your roster for 2022. But yes, so if somebody left office in 2021, they should not be on the 2022 roster. It's only those in office or in those positions today. It's actually if they're in office or in position as of April 30th. So if they left office, they would not have to file the 2022 FDS. But we will go over those scenarios later on in the presentation.
Okay, you know what I meant to say? What I meant to say is it was 2021 financial information they're submitted, not that they were part of the organization. But I got it. Yep. Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next question here. For OEM coordinators, do deputy OEM coordinators need to file? Again, I think Dana is going to talk about that in her presentation on who and who does not need to file. So we'll pause on that. In the past, if you had an effective date that expired and LGO couldn't file, I'd have to check on that. I think Teresa, I'll have to check on that. As far as I know, that effective date had no bearing on if they could not file. I will double check on that. But my understanding was that it did not preclude them from filing an FDS based on the effective dates. It was more informational than anything else. But I'll take a look at that and I'll let you know.
Yeah, this is Dana. Yeah, Mark, your recollection is correct. They could go ahead, in the past, they could go ahead and file. What happened usually was the LGO, especially if they were the municipal attorney or somebody like that, typically didn't want to file because then the information on the FDS form is incorrect. It would say that the term expired date was December of 2019 and they were filing the 2021 form, and they typically did not want to go ahead, and they actually cannot change that field. The LGO cannot change the term expires field. So if it's incorrect, they will have to contact you as the clerk to have it updated. They can't change it. So that might be what you're referring to. The LGO could have filed, but the information would have been correct because that's a field they can't change.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, here's an interesting one. A member of our township committee recently passed away. Do I just make the person inactive and the date? Yeah, so I don't know on that, Dana. I mean, if somebody's passed away, what their, if there's any requirements, that somebody has to still file.
So the board, yeah, the board does not go after, will not pursue violations against those who are deceased. So anytime somebody on your roster does pass away, you can mark them as inactive without worrying about the repercussions from us. Because the board, even if it's after the statutory deadline, and even after violations have been issued, if violations have been issued, you can contact us, but you can mark them as inactive. We don't go after people who have unfortunately passed away. So yeah, the clerk can always mark those who have passed away as being inactive.
Okay. I'm going to skip over some questions that I know Dana's going to answer at the end and who has to file and all that. So if I go past your question, don't be alarmed here. I'm going to talk about the one specific to what we just covered. It says, I'm a new user. Our previous clerk left without leaving their login information. It says, I emailed the address in the LFN to ask for access. Again, Dana, somebody in your organization would help that person, right, get access or update the information so they can get access.
Yes, yes. And we've been emailing people as soon as we get the email. So I would say if you haven't received the response within 1 business day, you could follow up. But if I did see there was one email sent today at like 1 o'clock that we did not get to before this FDS seminar. But otherwise, we've been getting to the emails as soon as we get them. But yes, if you email us, we will update the information as soon as we get to the email.
Okay, okay. Another person says, how do I get to edit the profile of a person? I'm assuming you're talking about an LGO. Again, from this home screen here, what you would do is just click on edit local government entity. I'm sorry, my fault. Wrong thing, that was the entity. You go into the roster. When you click on edit for an individual, let me do somebody that's active. When you're in their profile, if right here where it says registered login ID, it says edit profile. You can go into that link. And again, this would be the person, John Bose, right, who is the LGO. Again, you can update their information here. So you basically enter their first name, last name, middle name, address, primary phone number, and then down below can be their login information. Now, for example, let's say somebody's email address has changed. Let's say they were originally, okay, I'm going to use an old email here, but some people might still have it. Maybe it was jbose@aol.com, but now they're using Gmail. You can come in here and update that for them. I would just notify them that you change that, because if they've been using AOL.com in the past to log in and you've changed it to Gmail, they'll need to know that, that's the account that they need to log in with, going forward. So again, that's where you would actually update that person. So when you're in the edit screen for that person, that LGO, if you click on this edit profile button here, you can go in and update that user's particular information. Let's go through here, 2022, let's see. Okay, this is a long one. Telling us that they not only do our main tax attorney, the prosecutors, but also our alternates, conflicts, etc., due to the fact that they could be representing our municipality at some point. Not really sure what you're asking here, Jessica, but I'm just going to read it to Dana. Maybe she can make sense of it real quick. So the question is, Dana, is Dave Neno told me about 10 years ago that not only do our main township attorneys, engineers, prosecutors, defenders, etc., but also our alternates, conflicts, etc., due to the fact they could be representing our municipality at some point. So again, I'm not really sure what Jessica's asking here, but maybe she can rephrase it. And
I think this question, Mark, can be better answered during my presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that type of question we can. So if you have any questions right now about how to actually do anything that Mark's doing, if you have an actual technical question about how to add an LGO, mark them inactive, etc., now would be the time to ask that type of question. But questions about who has to file, I'll address during my portion.
Okay. When will the Manage LGO button be available? You mean it's available today? The system's open for 2022, so you can go in and manage your rosters as of today. I think that opened the 4th or a couple of weeks ago. It was open, so you should be able to go in and manage as of today. Let's see here. Just going through here. Says in the report, the Word format as an option. Could not see the screen was small. Yes, there is a Word format option if you print out the report. Let me just go here. I'll just print a quick report. Oh, got to pick a year. So when this comes up, yes, you can click on Word, and what it should do is it should launch Word. And let me see what it looks like in Word. I haven't looked at this, but yeah, so this is what it would look like in Word if you did it into Word, okay, from that report. So that's a Word option. And then I know some people like to work in spreadsheets, right? So I'll show you the Excel option. Right, so this would be the Excel option if you downloaded that report into Excel, okay? I will tell you that the way the report comes out, it's not like a typical Excel report where you'll be able to sort columns. It just downloads it into Excel. Basically, this report writer that we utilize in not just the FDS system, but in all our different systems, allow for these different drop downs. So again, it's up to you on what best works for you. But like I said, most people, I would say probably 95% of people just drop it into a PDF at that point in time. Okay, I'm almost done going through here. Okay, does not change. Okay, edit profile, but you cannot change password if they did not register. Correct. Yeah. So if an LGO has not registered their account yet, you cannot make any changes to the profile. Let me just show you real quick what would happen is, so you would know, like my one person here who hasn't created an account yet, let's say this individual, you're not even going to see their email address or that edit profile button listed. So until their account gets set up, you won't be able to edit their particular information at that point in time. So yes, but you'll know that if you only see PIN number listed and nothing underneath that, they have not registered an account or utilize their PIN number to register an account to your organization, okay? But if you find somebody like here, let's go to this person, and you see the registered login ID and you see an edit profile button, then yes, you can go in and you can edit that profile. When you have inactive, can you clarify again when you would use the inactive versus disabled? It's basically the same option. Disabled is more on your organization, the people within your organization. We use the word inactive for the LGOs, but it's pretty much one and the same. Okay, LGO or disabled. We just utilize different terms in the different screens. Yeah, so somebody asked about to receive a copy of the recording to refer back to. So what we'll do is this will recording of today's webinar, and actually the one we're running tomorrow, will be posted on the Sunrise YouTube page, but I believe local government services will provide links out to these webinars, so you'll be able to click there, and we'll probably send a follow-up email as well too with everybody that registered for the webinars, along with those links as well too. So yes, you'll get a link to the webinar once we have it uploaded to the YouTube screen. Let's see here. I don't have a Manage LGO button. I have a paper icon $, and it says file financial statement. You can file financial disclosure statement only from, yeah, so if it's saying if you can only file a financial disclosure statement from 4/4/2022, yes. Any LGOs will not be able to file until April 4th. That's the date that we've set right now to allow all organizations to manage their rosters and get their rosters up to date. So the official date of filing an FDS will not be until April 4th. That's what that's what the DCA or local government services has indicated they want the opening date to be for filing of FDSs.
Going back to that question, Mark, it sounds like that clerk is logged in as the filer. So remember that you have two email addresses, the one that Mark said you use to manage the roster, the one that you personally use to file. So if you log in and you're not seeing the screen that Mark was just showing, that means if you see file financial disclosure statement as one of the options, you're logged in as an LGO. If you don't see this screen, you're logged in as your own personal filing. So you won't be able to manage the roster. You're gonna have to log in with your other email that you're using to manage the roster.
Correct. And what we'll see now is, because I'm gonna actually go over now and talk about how an LGO files an FDS. So we'll see that screen in about 2 minutes. So I'm gonna move on here. I'm gonna log out as, being able like the local government entity. So let me log out. So let's talk about what an LGO would do. So if an LGO is brand new, they've never filed a financial disclosure statement for any organization, the first thing they're going to need to do is click on new registration. Okay, so what they're going to come in here and do is they're going to put in their first name. Right, so this is the person that I set up. I don't have a middle name. And then, as I mentioned, they need that PIN number in order to set up this account. So that's why I wrote down the PIN number before. Okay, and what they'll do is then they'll click on the button that says validate PIN. Okay, if they click on validate PIN and it says given PIN number is validated successfully, they can continue to register. However, if they get a message in red that says that the PIN number and name does not match, again, we talk about that mainly the first name, but that name has to match. The first name and the last name have to match to the PIN number. If they don't match, they're going to get a message in red that says there's something that doesn't match. So just make sure you give them exactly how you set up their first name and their last name and their PIN number. Okay. When they click on validate and it says now they've been validated successfully, they can go on to register, right? So I'll say here, just put in a thing here. Just kind of complete this real quick. And then they'll create a login name, right? So here, confirm login. And then they'll set up a password. Hope I typed everything correctly. And then down at the bottom, they're just going to need to check this little checkbox that says, I read the definitions and instructions. Unfortunately, we don't have anything up there, but it's just part of our security setup. They click on register. And once they get registered there, they'll get a message that they've registered successfully and to store their username and password so they can refer back to it. Now, if they click on the login screen here, let me go in here. Sometimes my fingers type quicker than, oh, that's why, see? Didn't type the email address correctly. Okay. Now, they'll get a warning when they first come in to say that their FDS has not been submitted yet, right? So they'll know the first time they're going in that they haven't submitted their FDS. And then once I'm in here, then I can actually go in and I can submit my FDS. So file financial disclosure statement, going back to the person whose question that Dana had just answered. If you see file disclosure statement, it says not until 4/4/2022. Again, I'm in my test system, so I'm able to file. It's just letting you know that you're in your LGO account, not your managed roster account. If I go into managed positions, I can see all the different positions that are assigned to my account. So I only have one right now for Edison Township. But if I had others, and I'll show you in a little bit, I have other organizations that I'm set up for, I would see all those different positions from all the different organizations. One thing to remember is that individuals, okay, will, when they go into managed positions, they can actually add from this screen, once they have an account set up initially, they can go add other positions to their account. They'll need how their name was for the other account or for the other organization and their PIN number that was issued. It's not the same PIN number. It would be a different PIN number. And once they validate that, their position for the other organization would be listed below, okay? So they can add as many different organizations to one account that they're assigned to, okay? Edit profile is what we saw earlier when you went in to look at their profile, okay? So it's the same thing. The only thing that the LGO could do that you weren't able to do is when it comes to listing if they're a law enforcement officer or a retired law enforcement officer or a member of a household with the law enforcement officer, they can actually come in here and answer that question right in here, okay, and save and update their profile. So they have that ability. You do not have that ability, but the LGO has that particular ability, okay? So let's go and file an FDS form. If nobody's ever seen this or done it themselves, I would click on File Financial Disclosure Statement. Okay, so this is basically an 8-step process. There's 8 screens that they'll kind of go through. It's pretty simple. So what they want to do is this information pulls from their profile. Okay, if they have a spouse, you know, so let's say, you know, my spouse's name is Jean, same last name. Can enter that in there, okay? They'll see the positions held down at the bottom, okay? If they see a position that's not there, they'll go back and manage their positions to add their positions. What we do tell the LGOs is that you want to make sure that you have all your positions listed before you go to file your FDS, because if you don't, and you got, let's say, the PIN number for another position, you know, 3 weeks from now, and you already filed the FDS, you're going to have to go in and refile again. That position that you added 3 weeks after the fact is not going to be attached to that FDS that they originally submitted. They're going to have to do another submission, an amended submission. So we tell individuals, or you should tell individuals if they're not aware, that they should have all their positions listed from all their different organizations that they may be associated with before they file their financial disclosure. Because again, if there's a position that wasn't listed initially with the first submission, they're going to have to go back and refile an amended form. So I have my information here. Everything looks good. I'm going to click on next and take me to the next screen. So then they have to list, obviously, all their sources of income. You know, I will just say consultant, you know, for whatever address, right? And this is for myself, right? I'm listing it here. I click on save, okay? And then down below, it lists that particular source of income. And I would list all the different sources of income that I have, okay? And it would just keep adding to the list down below. I can also add, you know, my spouse as well too, right? So I can say, you know, maybe, I guess for source of income, Dana, just correct me if I'm wrong. Are we listing the organization that they work for, or just what type of source is it?
Yes, so they would list the actual name. So if they worked for the state of New Jersey, they should list state of New Jersey.
Okay, got it, got it. So just, I'm going to say my wife works for Google, right? I'm going to hit save. You know, another source of income, you know, again, you know, maybe I do some work, like, so for, like, I guess municipal attorneys would list all the different towns that they might, you know, work for or whatever, in that. So again, there's really no, I say there's no limit, you know, but they would list all their sources of income down below. Once they do that, we go to the next screen, screen number 3. This is sources of fees and honorariums. Again, if they don't have any, they need to check the none box up at the top here, okay? If they don't, I believe it's not going to, yeah, it's going to give them an error message saying they need to have at least one entry or click none. So I'm going to say none. Go to the next screen. So this is sources of gifts, reimbursements, or prepaid expenses. Again, if they have any, they would list them or enter them. If they don't have any, they would just click on none. So I'll say none. And then this screen here is asking for financial information. So let me see here, add an entry. I'm just trying to remember this one. Yeah, so this is pretty much like I believe, Dana, just correct me. Is this like investment accounts and things like that they list here?
No, this is if you have an interest in a business organization like a corporation, LLC, partnership. So here, like a municipal attorney, if they are a partner, would have to write the law firm name. If you have an LLC, etc., for any of your hobbies, any of the clerks that are watching this, you would list the name of the LLC. Like perhaps you have a rental home, you might list 315 Main Street LLC if you have 50% interest with another person. So that's the type of information that would be disclosed here, business organizations that you have an interest in.
Gotcha. So it's not like your main source of income, it's more, yeah, other things that you do. Okay, so again, I'm going to say none here. I don't have any listed. I'm going to click on next. Okay, so this is the section here. This is where you have to list any real property. So again, here what you would do is say, let's say I have a second home, down on Long Beach Island, let's say, or my main home, let's say I'm in Edison, right? I said I'm in Edison. Where are we at here? Right here. So I list Edison. I would say, my block and lot. Okay. Ownership here, I would say joint because it's between me and my wife, and ownership would be 100%. And it says here, is this your home address? Yes or no. Now, one thing again, as for the question about law enforcement officer, so what we do here is if they're listed as a law enforcement officer, yes, on the public search site, we exclude displaying, I believe, this real property information as their primary home. However, if they have a secondary home, let's say in a short town, let's say Spring Lake, LBI, whatever, that is not listed, right? Dana, it's not their primary home address, right? It would be a secondary address.
Yeah, so under the police information laws, only the primary home address is redacted. So any other real estate that, if you have a police chief in town, any other real estate that he has, especially if he has rental properties, would not be redacted under this part of the law.
Okay, yeah. So if that question comes up to you, for anybody that falls under this particular law, it's just the home address is answered yes. Any other properties would be no. So I've entered my properties there. I'm going to click on next. Okay. Now these are comments that somebody can put in or enter any comments maybe to explain some of their answers within their FDS form. Again, if I don't have any comments, I'm just going to leave it blank. I'll click on next. Okay. And then what we do here is they have to electronically sign this, but if I click on the type your name box to electronically sign it, it doesn't allow me to type right now, because what we do is require them to review the financial form first as a PDF form. So they would have to click on this button right here to display the form, right? And we're hoping that they go through this and just review it and answer all the questions, how they answered them. And if everything is correct, then at that point in time, when they close that form, then this type box comes up and I can enter my information in. And then I would click on submit financial disclosure form. Okay, and it's just, giving a message that says, once your FDS is submitted, you'll not be able to make changes or modify this particular form. However, they can always go in and submit an amended form. We do recommend that they print out a copy of their form for their records, so they can click, print button at the bottom, and they can get a printout of their particular form. And then once they're done, if they go back out to the home screen, what it will do is they're back out, their form has been submitted, but at any point in time, if they go in and click, now it says, instead of saying file financial disclosure statement, it now says amend financial disclosure statement. So if I, again, had to make any changes to that form, maybe I totally missed something, I can go in and make those changes. Now, the good thing is when they go into amend, all the information that they entered previously is still going to be there. They don't have to re-enter it. So they can kind of just go through here. Let me go back to this one. Like, so where I put consultant earlier, you know, maybe this is part of my, you know, organization. It should have been consultant. It should have been, let's say it's Mark Management Company, right? Because it should have been the company name, right? And I hit save, and now that gets updated, okay? And they can continue to go through after they make their changes. Oh, none. Yeah, these we don't, the nones we don't keep, so those they would have to still click on the nones, but the other information that they entered will retain. I'm going to click on next. And again, they can't just go in and sign it. They have to review, you know, the new changes. So they'll click on that review financial form, review it. And then at that point in time, now I can go in and I can sign this electronically, submit it. And now this is submitted and it shows me my submission, okay? And that's it, you know, so like I said, they can go in at any point in time and they can, you know, always amend a previously filed FDS form that they've done. And then on that, I'm going to pause before we go to the search. I just want to see if there's any other questions that have come up since. Clerk resigned on April 4th is the date I can send FDS to LGO. So it says new to the system. Our clerk resigned February 10th. April 4th is the date I can send FDS to LGO. Now, when you say send FDS to an LGO, you could just inform all your LGOs that they can submit starting April 4th. I don't know what you want to send to them, but again, I would assume that most people on your roster already have accounts and they're just going to go in and update their particular, you know, form. We do retain. Oh, I'm sorry, you were going to say something, Dana?
Sorry, Mark, yeah, we do ask that the clerks wait until April 4th to let the LGOs know, since the LGOs can't file until that day. What typically happens, if you let them know earlier, they just try to start filing and then they'll call you or us. And also do wait until the LFN for them has been issued. Don't let them know, even if you finish your roster updates earlier, it doesn't matter. They won't be able to file until April 4th. So wait until our LFN has been issued for them and wait until April 4th if you can. Because otherwise LGOs will just go on and try to start filing earlier.
Yeah, and then you'll get a lot of messages saying, oh, I can't file yet. And, you know, yeah, you know, some people are good. Some people want to get it filed and out of the way. Other people, you're going to have to chase. So, you know, that's just the reality of it. So, okay, so I'm going to log out here. The next thing I just want to show you real quick is how to search for an FDS. So again, for the people who've been managing FDSs for their organization for many years, and I'm going to say more than 5 or 6 years since the system's been up and running. In the old days, if you know the general public wanted to see somebody's FDS, they would come in, most likely submit an OPA request, and you would have to go in, find that FDS form, and hand it over to them or give it to them. However, the good thing about the online financial disclosure system is that individuals can go out and search on their own. Okay, you could just point them out to the search site, and they can come out to this screen here, and they can go in and do a search. They can search by, there's a couple different ways they can search. They can search by an individual by putting in their first last name, or they could search by an organization. So I'm going to do individual first, right? So Gallant was the first person we just filed for, right? So if I come in here, what you notice when I do a search for Gallant, John, here he is, that comes up. Now you'll see that there's 2 FDS forms there. This was the first one that I originally filed, and then the second one, which was the amended form. And we also display in red that it's an amendment form. It goes in order, so even if he has a couple amended forms, the last one in the list is the most recent one, but you'll have some people who want to go and review each one and see what changes were made. All they need to do is click on the view button, and what it will do is it'll open up their PDF reader, and they can see a copy of the FDS form that was submitted, right? So that was the first one. If I want to look at the amended form, I would do the same thing. I would click on view, and I would see that amendment form as well too. Okay, so that's how you, so you know what, I want to just show you on that as well too. What we also put on the form, just so everybody sees, we also list here on the form if it's amended as well too, right? So we do list that statement if it's amended on the form as compared to the original, which that wouldn't display. Okay. So that's one way to search for an individual. If I wanted to download, or the individual wants to download all forms, they can click on the check boxes and click on download, and it would give them all the forms in one file, okay? But we see that mostly, let me click clear here. Let's say I want to look for Edison Township, okay? And I want to do a search for everybody in Edison, okay? Because you have people out there. Now, right now, I only have, 2 people that come up, okay? Because this is my test system. However, let me just show you, search. Let's go to the live search system so you get a better idea here, right? So if I put in Edison, and I do search, right? This is last year, right? There's no 2022 yet. But these are all the individuals that filed in Edison last year, right? We have 106 individuals within Edison, okay? If I want to go in and I want to download all these, let's say they have to do it on a page-by-page basis. We don't give them all in one shot. If I select all those and I click on download, we're going to ask them to click the CAPTCHA here and then hit continue. And then the system will actually go out and create this PDF, right? So this is 52 pages, right? So these are the first 25 that I selected here, all the FDS forms for Edison Township, for the first 25, right? Because that's what I selected here. I don't think we give them an all feature here. No, 25 is the max. So they would actually have to go through this screen 5 times to actually get all 106. We don't allow them to download, all 106 at one time. But they do have that, the public does have that ability to go in there and, to do the download. So that's up to them. So I think that's all the items on my agenda. Dana, did I miss anything that you know of offhand, or?
No, I think we're ready for my part of the presentation now, and
Sure.
hopefully that will answer the remaining questions that you as the clerks have.
Yep. So I'm going to make Dana the presenter so she can share her screen. Okay, Dana, you should be the presenter now.
Okay. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
I can. Yep.
Okay. All right. So first thing, to just refresh your memory, the requirement for the local government officers to file the FDS has been around since the local government ethics law came into place in 1991. Now, the local government ethics law does determine who has to file the FDS, and we do get that as a question a lot. Who has to file? Answer is, it's determined by the local government ethics law. Now, 40A 9-22.3G defines a local government officer as any person, whether compensated or not, whether part-time or full-time, number one, who is elected to any office of a local government agency. So that means your elected officials do have to file. Subsection 2, serving on a local government agency, which has the authority to enact ordinances, approve development applications, or grant zoning variances. This would be where Board of Health and Planning Board members have to file the FDS under. 3, who is a member of an independent municipal, county, or regional authority. Examples, housing authority, parking authority. Now, subsection 4 is the managerial executive employee. And for those of you who have been around for a few years, you know that now we have replaced this with a list, which will be on the next slide and which is in the LFN. Previously, prior to that list being adopted by the division, the clerks had to determine individually who fell into the managerial executive employees. So that's been replaced. So it's now a list that we give you that the board has adopted. But basically, when you're trying to determine who has to file the FDS, it's going to be under one of those 4 subsections. So if a mayor says, do I have to file the FDS? The answer is yes, because you're under subsection 1. So if you're trying to determine if a title has to file the FDS, you would look at, do they meet subsection 1? Do they meet subsection 2, subsection 3, or 4 on that list? And if they don't meet any of the 4 subsections, they do not have to file the FDS. Okay. So per the adopted rules, here is the list of the titles that do have to file the FDS. Now, I want to remind you that those who are in the titles, it doesn't matter if they're acting or provisional. If they're in that title, they do have to file the FDS. Also, a title that we obviously have a variety of municipality types in the state of New Jersey. So there are differences between a borough, a township, etc. If your town has a business administrator but calls it something else, if they're doing the similar duties to that, that person would have to file the FDS. Now, this list of titles is available on our website. It is also in the LFN. And this list of titles is intended to be exhaustive. We really wanted to help clean up the FDS process for you clerks. So when you're going through, we intended, like I said, for this to be exhaustive. So you shouldn't be looking for titles that aren't on this list and that don't fall in the other 3 subsections to add to it. I won't go over individual titles since they are all actually in the LFN and on the website. So basically go through, and if your municipality has them, make sure they're on that, make sure they are on that, on the FDS roster. So like I said, if an LGO meets one of the above subsections, they do have to file the FDS. And that implies even if the LGO is a volunteer or unpaid, as you can see in the actual statute, it said whether compensated or not, whether full-time or not. So we do get that as a question a lot, where LGOs will contact us and say, I don't understand why I have to file the FDS. I don't get paid. The statute flat out says they have to file if they're in that title, regardless if they get paid or not, if they're, quote, just a volunteer. And now, why not listed explicitly in the statute? It does not matter if they handle money or deal with finances. If they're listed in any of those 4 subsections, they have to file the FDS. Even if that LGO does not believe they have to, per the statute and per our rules, they are required to file the FDS. Okay. The local government ethics law does also define a local government agency. Now, this is a question, and one of the clerks did ask Mark this before, what is a local government agency for our purposes? This is the technical definition of it. Now, you can see that as part of the definition, other than that of a purely advisory nature, this is why advisory board members do not have to file the FDS. So members of groups like Shade Tree Commission, they're not listed in that in the list of titles that would be subsection 4 and their advisory opinions, their advisory committees. Therefore, they do not have to file the FDS. But this is actually where it is in the statute. So advisory committees do not have to file the FDS. Now, local government agency attorneys are attorneys that serve a local government agency, which I realize maybe doesn't help clarify it, but the actual definition is in the statute that was on the screen before. So examples would be the attorneys for fire districts and housing authorities, in addition to the municipal attorney. So special counsel, bond counsel, labor counsel. I believe in the example the clerk, the question the clerk had asked, she said conflict attorneys. They are not considered to be local government agency attorneys, and they are not required to file an FDS. In the list of titles, we did also include planning board and zoning board attorneys are required to file, but they are listed in example, they are listed in subsection 4. Okay. Now, if a shared services agreement exists between your municipality and another municipality for a title that's listed in the list of titles, the LGO has to file for both of your municipalities. So if you have like a tax collector, tax assessor that is doing a shared services agreement between your town and municipality B, that title should be listed on both rosters, and they should file for both entities. Okay. Now, who has to file the FDS as of the actual date? Now, our statutory deadline is April 30th. Under how the local government ethics law reads and how we've interpreted over the years is the local government officers who are in office on April 30th are those who should be on your 2022 roster. That means if they're not on the roster, if they're not working, if they're not employed in office on a commission that would have to file as of that date, they should not be listed on the 2022 roster. It's more helpful if you think of the FDS roster as being a completely standalone roster every year. I understand that we carry it over every year to make it easier for you. But imagine if you had to do the roster as if you were a completely new clerk and had no idea who was there last year. When you go to do the roster, it's who's on the planning board today, who was the municipal attorney today, or more technically, as of April 30th. It doesn't matter if they were in office in 2021. It's who is in that title as of April 30th. So who is in that title today? That means that anyone who left office as of December 31st should be marked as inactive on your roster, and they should not be on the 2022 roster. A few examples. A council member resigns on May 1st of 2022. This is after the statutory deadline. Do they still have to file the 2022 FDS? The answer is yes, they would, because they are in office on April 30th. So anyone who resigns after the deadline would not make a difference for this year's roster. That you should still list them, even if you know they're going to retire in May, they should still be on the roster, and you should still tell them to file. Now, another example though, the tax collector resigned on January 30th of this year. Does he or she have to file the FDS? The answer is actually no, because they are not in office as of April 30th. So it's going to be those who are in office as of April 30th and the rest of the year, but not those who were not in office, like I said. If they leave before April 30th, they do not have to file the FDS. So this tax collector in example 2 does not have to file. Third example, the council member who leaves office on December 31st, they do not have to file the 2022 FDS. Okay. Now, for those LGOs who are no longer an LGO right now as of April 30th, 2022, that's who you mark as inactive. So for the first example, if they left office on December 31st, they don't have to file, and you should be marking them as inactive. The second example, a council member who resigns on May 1st, 2022, or like I said, in another title who's going to retire, they are required to still file the 2022 FDS, even though they are going to miss it by 1 day. So they are still required to file. And you should not be marking that person as inactive for the 2022 year. You would wait until next year's roster opens up and then mark them as inactive, because technically they're inactive for 2023. But since they were in office on April 30th, they should still be filing the FDS. Now, some of the confusion does come from the fact that all of the information is from last year. So obviously, in this example, somebody who's filling it out now has to use the information, their financial information from the 2021 year. But that's only because we don't know our information for this year. If we had to guess our sources of income, it would just be a guess. Maybe we'll win the lottery and all of us can retire in June. But as of right now, we don't know what our sources of income would be for 2022. So that's why we have to rely on what we have, which would be from last year. After April 30th, new LGOs have 30 days to file the FDS, and that is in our statute as well. And we've interpreted that as being after April 30th. So in this example, the tax collector starts on July 1st of this year. You should still list them on the FDS roster, and you should tell that person that they do have to file the FDS. Now, the statutory deadline is April 30th of each year, and that is set by statute. So in this example, and we do get this often, somebody is a commissioner, they're in the hospital when the filing season opens, the clerk calls us and says, can we have an extension? Unfortunately, because it's a statutory deadline, staff cannot give you an extension. We don't have the power or the authority to grant you an extension because the deadline is set by statute. Now, any excuses like that, any potential defenses can be considered by the board when we issue violations for the non-filing, but unfortunately, staff cannot grant any extensions or any excuses like that. It is set by statute, so we don't have the power to say, yes, he can file later. I did really want to stress for this year the FDS enforcement. As many of you know, even before it was electronic, the FDS violations were always enforced. The first case that was actually under local government ethics law was a case of a non-filer. Something to keep in mind is FDS violations are violations of the local government ethics law. So if somebody does not file the FDS and they do get a notice of violation from us, that is technically a violation of the local government ethics law. This is a part of local government ethics law. So that is what they technically did violate. Now, I do have the power to tell you that we have been in discussions, and it does look like in this year we are going to enforce the FDS non-filers much earlier, much sooner than we did in years past. So it is going to be very important that during the month of April that you really do encourage your LGOs to file the FDS by the April 30th deadline. Because right now, our plan is to send out the reminder emails in May, and then by the middle of June to start issuing the fines for the notice of violations for those who have still not filed the FDS. So this is definitely something that we'd like to get the word out, that we do plan on, just like we have in past years, the board does plan on enforcing the FDS statute again this year. And that does mean, like I said, that within quite a few weeks of the April 30th deadline, we do plan on fining individuals who have not filed the FDS. So please make sure your rosters are up to date with those individuals and titles who are on there, who should be on there. Please make sure they're up to date, accurate per the LFN. And as soon as the April 30th deadline passes, if you notice that there are individuals on your roster who still haven't filed, consider reaching out to them or reminding them that we will be enforcing it, and we will be enforcing it quicker than we did in the past few years. Now, also as a friendly reminder, the board has become stricter on LGOs who incorrectly fill out the FDS. Example, LGOs who just don't list anything for a source of income. It's going to be very rare for somebody in the state of New Jersey to not have any income and still be living here. Because source of income obviously applies to everything: employment, wages, pension, Social Security, etc. So the board has become stricter the past few years, and we do get quite a few cases where someone in town will look at an FDS and say, I know so-and-so works at blah, blah, blah. They did not list it. I know so-and-so gets $5 grand a year from being a council member. They didn't list it. Here are some cases that we've had. First one, zoning board member violated it, which she failed to disclose her interest in and income deprived from a hotel. Second one, rent leveling board commissioner failed to disclose her properties on an FDS. This was even a worse violation for the board because a lot of the properties were under her control of the rent board. Same thing now with a fire commissioner. And honestly, I could have gone on and on and on. We typically, of all the cases we get a year, of all the ethics complaints we get, honestly, at least 30% are due to people not filling out the FDS correctly. So something to keep in mind too, that if you happen to notice someone in your municipality just puts none down for everything, maybe give them a friendly reminder that they may not get the mass notice of violation, but somebody could still find a violation against them. Now, the local boards, if your municipality or county has a local ethics board, the local board is responsible for everything that's ethics related. And FDS filing and FDS enforcement falls under that. So the local board is responsible for enforcement of the FDS non-filings. So that is something to keep in mind if most of the local ethics boards do not meet frequently. It's not like a planning board where they meet once a month, once every 2 weeks to get together and decide, but they are the ones that are going to be responsible for reminder emails and notice of violation. So if you have a local ethics board, do not expect to receive them from us. We don't send them to you, and we won't be the ones enforcing it. So that is also something to keep in mind. If the local ethics board gets dissolved, many of your LGOs may not have been used to filing the FDS or receiving fines from us for not having filed. So definitely something to keep in mind if the local ethics board is dissolved. There's going to be some LGOs who have never filed before and nothing happened to them. Okay. All right. So now, as clerks, your responsibilities are to maintain the roster, update, add, delete, mark as inactive. I just want to note here that staff cannot do those duties. So the only person who can do that for your roster is you or anyone else you designate as another LG representative. So that is something to keep in mind, is that no one else can do that for you. So we do get a lot of emails where someone will say, I'm the clerk, can you mark so-and-so as inactive? Only you as the clerk can mark someone as inactive or add people to your roster. Then it is also part of your duties to distribute the LFNs, to give out the pins. And as Mark said, as clerks, you can reset the passwords for the LGOs. You can change the email address and logins for the LGOs as well. And you can add a second LG representative. Oh, pardon me. Okay. Now, and I hope no one attended this hoping for information on Daniel's Law. We are going to add something similar to the FDS form for Daniel's Law to address the question. So it is going to be a question that's similar to what is on the form for the police information laws. However, because Daniel's Law is not going to be under our jurisdiction, or is not under our jurisdiction. So even though we will have that question on the FDS form, we're not going to be able to answer any questions from either you or the LGOs about whether or not Daniel's Law applies to them, how they should be answering that question, yes or no, etc. Those questions are going to be going through the Office of Information Privacy, which is going to be set up in DCA, but it is going to be a separate office from our division. And so right now, we don't have any jurisdiction or any more information about Daniel's Law other than what you have. So while we do intend on putting a question on the FDS form, and that will be explained in the LFN for the LGOs, we won't be able to provide any additional guidance on how LGOs should answer that question, or if they have any questions. All right. Okay, Mark, I'm going to end my presentation here because we are at time, and I do want to answer any questions that some of the clerks do have that maybe my presentation didn't address.
Okay, sure, Dana. So one question I saw when I was looking at your list of positions after file, you had municipal clerk on there, but a question came up, do the deputy clerks need to file as well too?
So, no, you know, I will go back to that slide real fast. No. So we did not intend for it. Where that question often comes into place is under 7 here, department heads, which include deputy directors, executive directors, etc., have to file the FDS. So technically, if your municipality considered the clerk's office to be a separate department, that and the deputy clerk to be considered a deputy director, the answer would be yes then. However, we explicitly only listed municipal clerk. So, and like I said, we do want that list to be exhaustive. So we don't want, if your municipality does not typically consider your clerk's office to be an entirely separate department, then I would say the answer is no on that one. Because we do intend for this list to be exhaustive like that.
Okay, so I'm going to try to go through these and see, filter out obviously stuff that I think you've answered or whatever, but somebody was asking, and I think you sort of mentioned it, that all these titles here are in the LFN, or they can get a copy of that?
Yes, they're all listed in the LFN, yes.
Okay, okay. Here's a question. We use the Monmouth County Board of Health for our health department. Do we need to add the health officer for Monmouth County to this roster?
So the answer is, if it's not a shared services, which with Board of Health, it should not be a shared service. It should be more of a designation. Then no, they would not have to be listed on the FDS roster. The shared services do have to be, but for Board of Health, where you've designated the county to fulfill your obligations, so you don't have a Board of Health anymore, that is a different distinction. So they would not have to be, no.
Okay. The next question says, you are asking the LGOs to file starting April 4th. So how do we have an accurate list on April 30th? I guess if somebody resigns between April 4th and April 30th?
So now that is a good question, but this is how the FDS has always been. So there is a little bit of predictive, there is a little bit of future telling, fortune telling on the part of the clerks as to who's going to be in office or still in these titles as of April 30th. But for the most part, when you send out, like when you're asking the planning board then, who's on the planning board, most of those planning board members are not leaving before April 30th. So for the most part, who's in these titles today will be who's going to be in that title on April 30th. The only difference would be if you happen to know someone's retirement is set for April 15th, you could leave them off the FDS roster. But that is how the FDS has always been set up. It's actually for enforcement purposes. You know, technically we would have trouble trying to trying to file a notice of violation against someone as of April 30th because the deadline is April 30th. So the FDS has always had this in place where it's those who are in those titles as of April 30th. So yes, if you do know that someone is going to retire prior to that day, you could leave them off the FDS roster. Otherwise, most clerks probably can assume that the people that are on the governing body today will be in office as of April 30th, pending some sort of scandal or sudden resignation.
Okay. Next question. It says the fire chief and deputy fire chief are volunteers. However, we do have a part paid fire department, so I would include them on the roster. Just please confirm.
So that's an interesting question from that clerk, because if in a part paid fire department, the fire chief would typically be paid. So that clerk may want to reach out to us directly. Because as a reminder, volunteer fire companies do not have to file the FDS, but that's because the division does not have enforcement over them because they are technically nonprofits. So in a part paid fire department, we would expect the fire chief to be one of the paid fire positions, in which case, so how this list is reading with 9 is deputy chief and assistant chiefs of police, deputy chief and assistant chiefs of the part paid fire department and paid fire departments. So we would expect that the fire chief and assistant chief for part paid to be one of the paid positions, and therefore they should be filing the FDS. Yes.
Okay. Next question, and I think this is kind of sort of 2 parts. It says the handout is only 2 pages. Where can I find the complete copy of the presentation? So yes, so my uploaded document, my PowerPoint was just the 2 pages on the agenda and the terms. I think I saw this also too. Is your PowerPoint here, Dana, available anywhere for people? Is the LFN just show you the positions, or is the complete PowerPoint available somewhere?
The LFN does just show the positions. It is different than the PowerPoint, but I can send it. We will send it to Mark, and he can distribute it as part of the follow-up to this presentation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I could do that. Yep. Who starts? Okay. So if after April 30th deadline, who have an LGO who starts, can the new LGO be added to the roster, and can the LGO file online? So I guess if somebody starts after April 30th, right? You can add anybody to the roster anytime throughout the year, right?
Yes, yes. So after April 30th, an LGO who starts has to be added to the roster and does have to file within 30 days. So yes, you can still add them after April 30th, and you should be adding them. If they're in one of these positions, so if you get a new municipal engineer on July 1st, you should be adding them to the roster and telling them they have to file the FDS.
Okay. I think you just answered this before when you were talking about the fire department. Does the volunteer fire department chief need to file? And I'm assuming if they're paid, right, they have to file?
Yeah, so if they're considered, the volunteer fire companies do not have to file the FDS, like I said earlier, because volunteer fire companies are technically nonprofits. So it is different. The fire district commissioners do have to file the FDS because that is another local government entity. So they will file for your municipality. But if you have a volunteer fire company, they do not have to file. Completely volunteer, they do not have to file the FDS. And that doesn't have anything to do with them being compensated or not. It's because fire companies are nonprofits. So we don't have jurisdiction over them. They're a nonprofit the same way Girl Scouts would be. So yes, if your municipality has a volunteer fire company, the fire chief technically has no affiliation to your municipality and would not have to file the FDS. And that is different than if you have a paid fire department or part paid, or if they are paid by the fire district. And I don't mean paid in terms of getting the stipend to do the firematic services. If the fire district had paid staff, they would have to file as well. But just the volunteer fire company would not have to file.
Okay. I'm going to wrap in the next couple of questions because they all, I guess, maybe didn't, or maybe you did, or it's not clear on who has to file, but a couple of the positions came up is a QPA who is paid as a contractor, and then also economic development, anybody from economic development, and Board of Election members and commissioners. So those are all positions, different, positions that people are asking.
Okay. So the first one is, for our purposes, it doesn't matter how the municipality chooses to pay anyone on this list of titles. So if you have anyone that's in this list of titles and you're paying them, so qualified purchasing agents do have to file per this list of titles. They're 31 on this list. It doesn't matter to us then if you're paying them as a contractor, if they are full-time for you, if they are doing the duties of it, then they would have to file. So in this case, I would say the contractor does have to file. Economic development now could fall under number 7, department heads, which would include the executive directors, division directors, deputy directors, and assistant directors. That is who they could fall under. Most likely that is who they would fall under, unless they're a special taxing district, but it sounds like it's an economic development department. And that's most likely what they would fall under. And the third one was, I believe, the Board of Election commissioners and members. And no, we used to include them in the LFN specifically as positions that are no longer required to file, or that are not required to file. So you could actually look at last year's LFN for a more thorough explanation of why they don't have to file. But I believe they are covered under state ethics. They are not actually considered local government officers. They are covered, I believe they are covered under state ethics. But either which way, they do not have to file the FDS.
Okay. Just going back, I know we keep hashing this. I guess this is a big topic about the fire chief and deputy chief. If they're not paid, do they have to file?
Well, so the actual, what they need to be looking at under 9 here is, first, if the department is a paid fire department, part paid fire department, versus if it's a volunteer fire company. So that is really the question. That is really the question that determines whether or not they are LGOs for our purposes. And that is different because, like I said, remember, if you're in any of these titles and for some reason you're part-time, full-time, not being paid, if you're in any of these other titles, you would still have to file the FDS. So for our purposes, when people ask, does the fire chief have to file, even if he's not paid, the question isn't yes or no. Or I'm sorry, the answer isn't yes or no. The answer is it a paid fire department? Is it part paid fire department? Is it a volunteer fire company? If the answer is it's a volunteer fire company, then the answer is no. The volunteer fire company members do not have to file the FDS.
Okay. Another question on a position, deputy OEM coordinators, do they have to file?
So they are, hold on one second. So 18 on the list is the municipal emergency management coordinators do have to file. As for the deputies, the only way they would have to file is if your municipality or county considered it to be a completely different department. And for the deputies to be considered deputy directors or deputy division heads. But the municipal OEMs are the ones that definitely have to file.
Okay. Next question. Somebody says that on this list, number 21 and 20 and 21, you have municipal and county prosecutors, but what about public defenders?
No, public defenders are not on the list and therefore do not have to file.
Okay. Okay. And then I think the last question, a couple more, just we're almost at the end here. Are you issuing any type of CEUs for this webinar?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So,
they're just wondering how to look at them, so.
Yes, and we, originally we had said for an hour and a half, since it is now an hour and 45 minutes, we will make sure that it is issued for an hour and 45 minutes or however long this goes.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind though, that anybody who wants this for CEUs, it's only if you're watching the live webinar right now. So if you ask someone else in your office to watch it, or you go to watch the recording later, you won't be issued CEUs for the recording. It's only for the webinar right now.
Okay. Okay, let's just see here. Just one quick question on who has to file. Historical Preservation Commission members, would they fall into any category?
They should be an advisory board, and advisory boards do not have to file. Yeah, yeah. Okay. The advisory boards only make recommendations, and typically only make recommendations to either something like a planning board or the governing body. And therefore, so advisory board members do not have to file the FDS, and most likely that's what they would fall under.
Okay, okay. I think that's all the questions. I did answer some of the questions directly in the comments. I sent out answers because I think Dana had already discussed that, or there were just general questions that I can answer. So, hopefully you got them. But those are all the questions that people have posted so far. Again, I want to thank everybody for attending today. We will send out, like I said, we'll send out a link to the recordings once they're posted. Give me a few days on that, because I actually have to download the recording and convert it and then get it posted to YouTube's format. And then Dana will send me the PowerPoint presentation. So, we'll forward that out to everybody that attended, today's webinar as well, too. So you have a copy of the PowerPoint. Other than that, I want to thank you again today. Dana, thank you for your time and answering all the questions. I hope everybody got better insight on, what they need to do. So, as always, if there's any issues that you have, completing your rosters, I would say you need to reach out to local government services first. And if it's a technical issue, obviously they'll get in touch with us to, help resolve it. But the good thing is we generally have very few issues that come up during the course of the season. So Dana, I don't know, is there anything else you want to add here?
No, I just want to thank everyone once again who attended this webinar. And I also, on behalf of the division, wanted to thank everyone for all their assistance in the FDS process. We really do appreciate everything you do to make sure that the FDS process goes smoothly in your municipality and counties. So thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, thanks again. I'll be ending the webinar. And again, anybody just reach out to DCA if you have any questions, and then we'll go from there. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.